Walk into a crowded room, and you will experience one of two distinct reactions. Either the noise and the movement charge you with energy, or the exact same environment slowly drains your battery, sending you searching for a quiet place to recover. We spend an enormous amount of time trying to categorize these reactions. Millions of people take assessments like the Myers-Briggs or the Big Five, eager to sort themselves into precise letter combinations and behavioral boxes. The prevalence of these tests raises a specific question. Are these differences in social energy merely psychological preferences we adopt, or are they rooted in the hard physical wiring of our biology? Answering this matters. These baseline traits operate invisibly in the background of our lives, silently dictating the career paths we choose, the partners we are drawn to, and our overall satisfaction with the world around us. The modern vocabulary for this divide began in 1921 with the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Gustav Jung. At the time, Jung was attempting to resolve a deep professional conflict between two opposing psychoanalytic camps. On one side, he observed Sigmund Freud. Freud's framework of human desire was entirely outward-facing, focused on how individuals interacted with external objects and other people. On the other side was Alfred Adler. Adler's framework was distinctly inward-facing, prioritizing an individual's internal pursuit of power and self-preservation. Jung realized that these two men were simply looking at the exact same human behaviors through different psychological lenses. He proposed that people possess a natural direction for their libido, or psychic energy. Introverts direct this energy inward, toward ideas and reflection. Extroverts direct it outward, toward people and external events. Jung framed this entirely as a psychological theory. But decades later, modern neuroscience would prove that this directional flow of energy is actually governed by the physical structures inside our brains. When an introvert and an extrovert walk into the exact same loud, highly stimulating environment, they are not experiencing the same physical reality. Their nervous systems are reacting to the room in entirely different ways. Look at this diagram comparing two brain models. The gauges represent the ascending reticular activating system, or ARAS. This network acts as the brain's internal volume dial, regulating how awake and alert the cortex is at any given moment. Introverts naturally possess a very high baseline of cortical arousal. Because their internal volume is already turned up, adding the noise of a crowded room quickly overstimulates them. Notice how the introvert gauge spikes into the red zone. To protect against this overload, their brains trigger a response called protective inhibition, forcing them to withdraw. Extroverts operate with the opposite hardware. Their natural baseline of arousal is low. Without external stimulation, they feel sluggish or bored. Watch as the extrovert gauge slowly rises into the optimal green zone, only after the noise and activity of the room are introduced. They actively need that external input to wake their brains up. This arousal system is paired with a second biological driver, the brain's dopaminergic reward network. Research from Cornell University reveals that an extrovert's brain actually releases a more robust hit of dopamine in response to external rewards, like social interaction, achieving new status, or making a new connection. What society labels as attention-seeking in extroverts or antisocial behavior in introverts are highly mechanical processes. They are biological imperatives to regulate brain chemistry. Understanding this neurobiology dismantles several cultural stereotypes. For example, introversion is constantly confused with shyness, but shyness is a manifestation of social anxiety and fear of negative judgment. Introversion is simply a lower threshold for sensory overstimulation. This also corrects the assumption that introverts dislike people. Because their brains process information heavily in regions dedicated to meaning-making and problem-solving, they prefer deep reflection and creative independence over rapid-fire small talk. On the flip side, the extrovert's rapid, outward-facing processing style often gets them unfairly labeled as shallow or immune to loneliness. In reality, extroverts require solitary downtime to recharge. They process that downtime in shorter microdoses. An extrovert might recover by putting headphones on and listening to music while sitting in a busy coffee shop, maintaining a low hum of external stimulation while resting. These contrasting neurological needs do not represent character flaws. They generate specialized, complementary strengths. We see these specialized strengths constantly in human relationships. Introverts build social networks through deep, one-on-one emotional connections, while extroverts leverage larger group dynamics to rapidly gather a wide array of social information. But in the workplace, these dynamics are often misunderstood. As this paper on leadership strengths points out, corporate culture historically favors extroverted traits, like dominance and high-energy communication, assuming that the loudest voice equates to the strongest capability. Research out of the Wharton School adds vital nuance to this assumption. Extroverted leaders do excel when managing passive teams that require external motivation. However, when managing highly proactive employees who bring their own ideas, a highly extroverted leader can actually stifle team performance. Looking at the highlighted News Saxena's paper, introverted leaders possess distinct strategic advantages. They excel at analytical thinking, thorough risk assessment, and active listening. Because they process internally before speaking, they create space for their teams to innovate. This quiet, analytical approach to problem-solving is exactly what drove Bill Gates to build Microsoft into a global force of technological innovation, and it is the same cautious, data-driven processing style that Warren Buffett has used to achieve decades of unmatched financial success. Optimal leadership does not require a specific personality type. It requires accurately matching a leader's specific neurobiology to the unique dynamics of their team. Jung himself recognized the limits of strict categorization, noting that a pure introvert or a pure extrovert does not exist in nature, and that such a person would belong in an asylum. On the Big Five personality spectrum, human behavior is fluid. Most of the population clusters in the middle. These individuals are ambiverts. They have the biological flexibility to slide across the center, dialing their arousal thresholds up or down depending on their environment. Psychologist Jerome Kagan proved that our baseline biology is inherited from birth, but as these neural pathways show, repeated exposure to different environments allows us to build free traits, adaptive behaviors we deploy outside our natural comfort zone. The objective is not to force a permanent shift in your biological baseline. It is to build a life strategy that recognizes how your brain handles stimulation and then places you in environments that leverage your natural neurochemical strengths. Once you identify where your nervous system naturally sits on that spectrum, you stop fighting your biology and start using it to your advantage.